All right, so in my Bridgerton post, I got a lot of comments. One that kind of stuck with me was, it's an adaptation. Adaptations aren't going to be as good as the books. Oh, sure. Duh. But at the same time, should we not expect a certain level of quality? I was watching another YouTuber who was reviewing a movie that, one of my favorite movies, and I realized while watching it, it started as a book. It was an adaptation, and it's one of the best movies ever made. So I decided I'm going to make a list, my top 20 book to film adaptations. Comic to film's not going to be in this, so no Marvel movies, none of that. I'm not doing fairy tales to films either, just because there's thousands of different variations of fairy tales. So I'm not doing modern retelling, so sorry Clueless, even though I love you, you're not in it. This is also nixing any like self-help books that were turned into like a screen, so like Queen Bees and Wannabes as Mean Girls. That's not going to be in this list either. This is going to be a straight book to film adaptation, all right? And so here we go. Honorable mentions, sorry, but you are not on this list. Wizard of Oz. It was originally a book, and if you read the book, you've likely watched the movie first, though, because the movie came out and was an instant classic. But it does parallel the book. It does leave out several important details from the book, but it gets a lot of it correct. So Wizard of Oz, honorable mention, sorry, but you're not on the list. Okay, starting with number 20, Forrest Gump. That's based on a book. I haven't read the book, but I do know that it was based heavily on the book Forrest Gump, and that's a movie I quote daily, and it's a fantastic movie. 19, Something Borrowed. Based on the book Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin. Awesome book, and they did really well with this movie, and it's a great chick flick. 18, A Knight's Tale, which is based on the Canterbury Tales. This was a great amalgamation of the Canterbury Tales, and it was done so well. It's one of my favorites. 17, Gone with the Wind, based on Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Now, it's not up to today's code of societal standards. However, for when it was filmed and for the source material, this is really, really good as an adaptation. So good. 16, A Little Princess. I can't remember who the author is because it's one of those classic books. But this version of the movie was done so well. It came out in the 90s, and it was one of those movies that I watched all the time in my childhood. This movie brings me to tears, and I know the book does the same. 15, which I don't have the movie, but I have the book. Jaws by Peter Benchley, and Jaws, the movie by Steven Spielberg. So well done. My only drawback is that Steven Spielberg could not get the driving force of the mayor really in there, so he kind of just seems like a dick in the movie, whereas in the book, it's much more fleshed out. But it is such a great adaptation from book to movie. 14, Dracula. Francis Ford Coppola's 1997 Dracula. Unlike most other Draculas, this one is surprisingly close to the book. So close, in fact, that when I struggled to finish this in time for a book report, I cranked this thing in over the weekend, watched it, so I had a refresher, and passed the book report with flying colors. Also, I quote Anthony Hopkins from this movie way more than I should. Number 13, The Godfather. The reason this is on this list, the script for the movie was actually written by the author. Surprise! That's why it's one of the best. 12 is Sense and Sensibility, which I usually have the DVD, but I lent it to my sister, so she has it. But yeah, Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, and it's 1995 when it came out. It has Emma Thompson, Alan Rickman, and Kate Winslet. Sorry. Fabulous movie. Close to the book. That's a great movie, and that's one of the ones that I will pick up and just watch. 11, I also don't have this one on me, V for Vendetta. And I know I said no comics, but this is a graphic novel, so it's somewhat different. It's not like an ongoing, constant series that has like thousands of iterations. It is one graphic novel. V for Vendetta, the movie that came out in 2005, I think, with Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman. fabulous movie. I love that movie, and the it stayed pretty close to the graphic novel, if I remember correctly. Now we're hitting the top 10, the Harry Potter series. Now, I know J.K. Rowling has done some stuff, but that does not change the quality of book to film adaptation and how close it is. This is probably one of the gold tier versions of book to film adaptations, and is what we should be striving for. I mean, especially long-term adaptation. If you're doing a long-term adaptation like a show, you want to keep quality like you have in these movies going. Mine is The Hunger Games. They did fabulous with turning these books into movies. They're pretty much pretty close except for some physical details, but otherwise, yeah, you're pretty much consuming the same thing. My number 8, which might be a controversial pick, Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame. I know that one has changed quite a bit from the books. However, the changes they made, they were very clearly made towards a kid's audience, changing some things that were too mature for a children's audience, but it kept the main message going. It also has an unbelievable soundtrack, and the addition of Clopin is... Number 7 was this year's FX's Shogun. I talked about it with my uncle who read the book back in like the 70s or 80s, and he absolutely loved it. It was his best. I loved watching the show, and to hear how he talked about the book and how close it was, it makes me really want to read the book. So yeah, 7, Shogun. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's a fabulous show. 6, Count of Monte Cristo from the 90s. This was Henry Cavill's first movie, so if you're a Henry Cavill fan, watch it. But you got Jim Caviezel as the main guy and Guy Pearce as the jerk. This is a fabulous movie. Number 5, I said Pride and Prejudice 2005. It easily could have been the 90s short series of Pride and Prejudice here. Both of them did so well in depicting Darcy and Elizabeth and the sisters. I picked the 2005 version just because, one, the cinematography and the music is beautiful, but at the same time, it's a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit more manageable to like squeeze into my schedule. But yeah, Pride and Prejudice, both of those versions, they're pretty much tied here in number 5. Number 4, It, Part 1 and Part 2, 2017 and 2019. I know the miniseries with Tim Curry is much beloved, but I love these movies. Versus the book, absolutely. They took out stuff that I felt was completely unnecessary that was in the book and kept this pretty clean cut and very, very close to the book. Number 3, and this is one of my all-time favorites. I've read the book and I love the movie. The Princess Bride. The book is a complete parody of fairy tales, and the way they did that in this movie it's just so heartwarming and it's so beautiful, and I absolutely love this movie. I know all of the words. I can quote it backwards and forwards. So yeah, always down to watch this. Number 2, Jurassic Park. Both the book and the movies are so great. They're so great, and they are so close. And it does help that Steven Spielberg did talk with Michael Crichton while Michael Crichton was writing the book, and they discussed and hammered out lots of details, which made both of these super special. And so, yeah, and this film, the first movie, still holds up to this day. It's definitely one of the best adaptations. And finally, number 1, the GOAT for film adaptations, The Lord of the Rings. If you have the extended cut, that has all of the extra special Silmarillion details that you won't get this kind of stuff. You won't get these kind of adaptations today. You just won't. And it's a shame because this was fabulous. Fabulous. To me, those last 3 are what we should be striving for when we say we want an adaptation. And if you're going to give us an adaptation, that's what you should be striving for. If you agree or disagree, comment. I'd love to hear.